The alien tribunal chamber shook as Commander Jake Harper slammed his fist against the energy barrier separating him from the Valkyrie High Council. Blood dripped from his knuckles where the shield had burned him, but he didn't flinch. "You want to execute her for losing a battle?" Jake's voice cut through the crystalline hall like a blade. "She saved 3 colonies. The lead counselor, a towering figure with 6 arms and skin like polished obsidian, tilted its head. She failed. The human fleet should have been annihilated. Instead, Commander Kira Valzeth retreated. Disgrace demands death. Behind the council, Kira knelt in chains that pulsed with blue energy. Her silver hair hung over her face, but Jake saw her shoulders trembling. She had been his counterpart during the border wars, the only Valkyrie commander who understood that some battles weren't worth winning if they cost everything. "Let me speak to her," Jake said. Denied. Jake reached for his sidearm. 12 Valkyrie guards materialized around him, their weapons humming to life. He froze but didn't lower his hand. "I invoked the right of challenge an hour ago," Jake said. "Your own laws say I can claim her fate as mine." The council chamber fell silent. The lead counselor's eyes narrowed to slits. "You would bind yourself to a disgraced warrior? A human binding to Valkyrie dishonor? I'm binding to someone who values life over pride," Jake shot back. "Something your empire forgot." Kira's head snapped up. Her violet eyes met his, wide with shock. "No," she whispered. "Human, do not do this." Jake ignored her. "Accept the challenge, or admit your laws mean nothing." The counselor's mandibles clicked in what might have been rage or amusement. "Very well. By our ancient codes, she becomes your responsibility. Her dishonor is now yours. Her debts are yours. Her very existence belongs to you until honor is restored." The chains around Kira dissolved. She collapsed forward, gasping. "Take your prize, human," the counselor hissed. "And know that the galaxy will see her as your slave. Nothing more." Jake crossed the distance in 3 strides and hauled Kira to her feet. She was taller than him by half a head, but she swayed like she might fall. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why would you do this?" "Because someone who chooses mercy over murder doesn't deserve to die." He steadied her with one hand and kept the other on his weapon. "And because I need a first officer?" Her eyes went wide again. "You cannot mean to. We're leaving. Now." The council chamber's doors burst open behind them. Jake didn't look back as he half-carried Kira toward his ship. The real fight was just beginning. The docking bay erupted into chaos the moment Jake and Kira stepped through the archway. Valkyrie soldiers poured from side corridors, their plasma rifles charging with high-pitched whines that echoed off metal walls. Jake shoved Kira behind a cargo container and fired 3 shots before the first enemy could aim. 2 soldiers dropped. The third shield flared blue before collapsing under his 4th round. "Your weapons shouldn't penetrate our shields," Kira gasped beside him. "Death World engineering." Jake ejected his spent magazine and slammed in a fresh one. "We don't build things that only work sometimes." A plasma bolt scorched the air where his head had been a second earlier. He returned fire, dropped to one knee, and hit the shooter in the center mass. The Valkyrie crumpled. "They're trying to kill you," Kira said. Her voice carried disbelief. "They're actually trying to kill a diplomatic envoy. They're trying to kill both of us. Once by retreating, once by making them honor their own laws. Empires don't forgive that." His earpiece crackled. "Commander Harper, this is Lieutenant Grant on the Defender. We're reading weapons fire in your location. Do you need extraction?" "Negative, Grant. I've got the package and we're moving to the ship. Warm up the engines and prep for combat departure." "Copy that. Be advised, Valkyrie cruisers are positioning around the station." Jake cursed under his breath. "How many?" "4 so far. More incoming." Kira's hand caught his arm. "You need to leave me." "They won't fire on you if I'm not happening." Jake checked the corner ahead, saw it clear, and motioned her forward. "I didn't come here to abandon people." They sprinted across an open section of the bay. Energy bolts carved burning trails through the air around them. Jake felt heat sear past his shoulder close enough to smell burned fabric. He twisted mid-run and fired back, buying them seconds. His ship, the Defiant, sat on Platform 12, a modified Earth corvette with armor plating that looked like someone had welded scrap metal over elegant design. Because that's exactly what they'd done. Human ships weren't pretty, but they took damage that would vaporize anything else. The boarding ramp lowered as they approached. Lieutenant Grant's voice came through again. "Commander, station weapons are powering up. Tell me something I don't know." Jake practically threw Kira up the ramp and followed, hammering the close button. The ramp sealed with a hiss as plasma fire peppered the hull. Inside, Kira stared around the narrow corridor with wide eyes. "This is a warship? It looks like a mining vessel." "It's both. Welcome to human multi-purpose design." Jake ran toward the bridge, Kira stumbling after him. "We don't have the resources to build single-purpose ships, so everything does everything." He burst onto the bridge where Grant and 3 other crew members worked frantically at their stations. Grant, a stocky woman with close-cropped red hair, barely glanced up. "Valkyrie cruisers have us boxed in, Commander. Station defense grid is live. We've got maybe 30 seconds before they open fire." Jake dropped into the captain's chair. "Full power to forward shields. Divert everything from life support reserves." "That's insane," Kira breathed behind him. "You can't punch through a defense grid and 4 cruisers." "Watch me." Jake's hands flew across the controls. "Grant, plot a course straight through cruiser formation. Tightest gap you can find." "Sir, the gap is only 40 meters wider than our hull. Then we'll have 20 meters of clearance on each side." "Sounds comfortable." He glanced back at Kira. "Strap in somewhere or hold on to something. This is going to get rough." The Defiant's engines roared to life with a sound that rattled teeth. Through the viewport, the Valkyrie cruisers drifted into tighter formation, their weapons ports glowing. "They're hailing us," Grant reported. "Ignore it." Jake gripped the controls. "All hands, brace for combat acceleration. Commander, they're demanding you return the prisoner, or they'll—" The first volley from the defense grid slammed into their forward shields. The bridge lights flickered. Sparks erupted from a control panel on the left. Jake grinned, wild and fierce. Too late for negotiations. Punch it. The Defiant launched forward like a missile, and the universe became fire and thunder. The Defiant screamed through the gap between cruisers with less than 15 meters of clearance. Metal shrieked as their starboard shields scraped against a Valkyrie hull, sending cascades of sparks into the void. Jake wrestled with the controls as the ship bucked and rolled. "Grant, return fire on that cruiser. Everything we've got. Missiles away." The human-designed warheads weren't elegant. They were chunks of depleted uranium wrapped around chemical explosives, primitive by galactic standards. But they hit like hammers from hell. The nearest Valkyrie cruiser's shields collapsed under the barrage, and 2 missiles punched through its hull. "Direct hit on their port engine cluster," Grant shouted over the alarms. "They're venting atmosphere." Kira gripped the back of Jake's chair, her knuckles white. "You just crippled a warship with missiles." "Missiles. We stopped using those 3,000 years ago. Your loss." Jake yanked the ship into a dive that would have killed anyone without inertial dampeners. Kinetic weapons don't care about shield frequencies or energy absorption. Mass times velocity equals dead enemy. The station's defense grid lit up behind them. Beams of coherent energy slicing through space. One caught their aft shields and the ship lurched hard to port. "Aft shields at 40%, called out Ensign Kyle Porter from Tactical. "We can't take many more hits like that." "We won't have to." Jake checked his display. "Next jump point is 90 seconds out." A proximity alarm screamed. 2 Valkyrie fighters had broken from the cruiser formation and were closing fast. Their weapons blazed, walking fire across the Defiant's hull. "I've got 'em." Lieutenant Adrian Cross, the weapons officer, didn't wait for orders. The Defiant's point defense turrets swiveled and opened up. Tracer rounds. Painted lines of light through the darkness. The first fighter exploded in a ball of superheated gas. The second tried to break off, but Cross led it perfectly. The fighter disintegrated under sustained fire. Dia. Kira watched in stunned silence. "Your reaction time. Your weapons tracking. How is this possible?" Our ships are faster. Our shields stronger. Your ships are designed by committees who never saw combat, Jake interrupted. Ours are designed by people who know they might die in them. Makes for different priorities. The final cruiser moved to intercept, its massive bulk sliding into their escape vector. Weapons ports along its kilometers-long hull began to glow. Grant's voice went tight. Commander, that's the Eternal Judgment. Flagship of the Valkyrie Third Fleet. We can't fight that thing. Jake's eyes narrowed. We're not fighting it. We're going through it. Through! Kira's voice cracked. That's a dreadnought. Its shields could stop a planet-killer missile. Good thing we're not a missile. Jake diverted every spare ounce of power to the forward shields. The bridge lights dimmed to emergency red. We're a ship from Earth, and we don't stop for anything. The Eternal Judgment opened fire. Dozen of energy beams converged on the tiny human corvette. The Defiance shields flared white-hot, and the temperature on the bridge spiked 20 degrees in seconds. Forward shields at 60%. 50. 40. Porter counted down, sweat pouring down his face. Jake didn't slow, didn't turn. The Defiant arrowed straight at the dreadnought's belly where the shield generators created a natural weak point to allow fighter launches. They're not moving, Kira whispered. They think you'll break off. They don't know humans very well. Jake's finger hovered over the emergency thruster control. Brace, brace, brace. The dreadnought's ventral shields flared as the Defiant hit them at full combat speed. For a heartbeat, physics hung in balance. Then the human ship's reinforced nose, designed to ram through asteroid fields, punched through like a fist through paper. The Defiant shot through the gap, trailing sparks and molten shield energy. The dreadnought's own shields collapsed inward from the breach, and secondary explosions rippled across its underbelly. We're clear! Grant's voice carried pure disbelief. We actually made it through. Jump point in 10 seconds, Jake said, his voice steady despite his hands shaking on the controls. Spinning up FTL drive. The Valkyrie fleet scrambled to pursue, but they were seconds too late. The Defiant's experimental human jump drive, unstable and dangerous and twice as fast as anything the galaxy had seen, tore a hole in space. They jumped, and the Valkyrie system vanished behind them. In the sudden silence, Kira slumped against the wall. You're insane. Every one of you is completely insane. Jake unbuckled and stood, feeling every bruise from the acceleration. Welcome to humanity. We'll get you a uniform and a duty station once we're sure we're not being followed. She stared at him. You truly mean to make me crew? Not a prisoner? Not a servant? I meant what I said back there. I need a first officer who knows Valkyrie tactics. He held out his hand. Question is, are you willing to stand against your own people? Kira looked at his hand for a long moment. Then she gripped it, her strange violet eyes burning with something that might have been hope. I stood for honor and they called it disgrace. Perhaps it's time to find new people. Her grip tightened. Show me how humans fight, Commander Harper. Show me everything. Jake smiled. Better get some rest first, because where we're going next, the Valkyrie will seem friendly. The Defiant limped into the frontier station 3 days later, trailing coolant vapor and sparking from a dozen hull breaches. Jake guided the battered ship into dock with the kind of precision that came from flying wounded too many times. Kira stood beside him on the bridge, now wearing a hastily modified human uniform. She'd barely slept, spending every waking hour studying Earth military doctrine with an intensity that impressed even Grant. This station, Kira said, watching the viewport as the massive structure grew closer. It shouldn't exist. It's built inside an asteroid field near a neutron star. The radiation alone should kill everyone aboard. Should being the key word. Jake shut down the main engines and switched to maneuvering thrusters. Humans don't pick safe real estate. We pick strategic real estate and make it safe enough. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud. Jake stood and stretched, his spine popping. Grant, you have the bridge. Get engineering teams on those hull breaches. Porter, Cross, full diagnostic on weapons and shields. What about her? Grant nodded toward Kira. Station command is going to have questions. Let them ask. Jake headed for the airlock. She's crew now. That's all they need to know. Kira followed him through the corridors. Crew members stopped to stare at the tall alien woman in their midst, but Jake's glare kept them moving. They reached the airlock just as it cycled open. Station Commander Victoria Lang waited on the other side, flanked by 4 armed guards. She was a compact woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. Harper. Her voice could cut steel. You've started a diplomatic incident that has 3 Valkyrie fleets heading toward human space, destroyed a dreadnought's shield generators, and brought an enemy officer onto my station. Please tell me you have a brilliant explanation. She's not enemy. She's defecting. Jake stepped aside so Lang could see Kira properly. Commander Kira Valsith, former Valkyrie 3rd Fleet. She knows their formations, their tactics, their weaknesses, everything. Lang's eyes narrowed. Or she's a plant sent to feed us false intelligence. Kira stepped forward, her chin raised despite the rifles pointed at her. I was sentenced to death for refusing to commit genocide against human colonies. Commander Harper invoked your right of challenge and bound my fate to his. Under Valkyrie law, I am his responsibility until honor is restored. Under Valkyrie law, you're his slave, Lang said flatly. That's the translation our linguistics team provided. The translation is incomplete. Kira's hands clenched. The binding is mutual. His honor is now mine. His battles are mine. His fate is mine. It's not slavery. It's brotherhood forged in debt. Lang looked at Jake. You bound yourself to her? Do you have any idea what that means politically? I know it means she lives and we get actionable intel on the Valkyrie fleet movements. Jake met her stare without flinching. I made the call. Court-martial me if you want, but she stays. A tense silence stretched. Then Lang sighed. I don't have time to court-martial you, Harper. We've got bigger problems. She gestured for them to follow. Walk with me. They moved through the station's main concourse, a chaotic mix of military personnel and civilian contractors. Kira's eyes widened at the diversity. Humans of every variation, all working side by side in organized chaos. 2 days ago, the Valkyrie issued an ultimatum, Lang said as they walked. Return their disgraced commander or face total war. Our diplomats are stalling, but we've got maybe a week before their fleets arrive in force. How many ships are we talking about? Jake asked. 80 cruisers, 12 dreadnoughts, 300 support vessels. Lang stopped at a tactical display showing the sector map. Red icons swarmed toward human territory. They're calling it the Purge Fleet. Meant to wipe us out completely. Jake whistled low. That's half their entire military. They're that angry about losing one officer? Grant had followed them from the ship. That's insane. It's not about me, Kira said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. It's about fear. I proved that human tactics can defeat Valkyrie doctrine. I showed weakness in their system. They're not coming to punish you. They're coming to erase the evidence before other species see it. Lang studied her. You're saying this is about saving face? I'm saying this is about survival. The Valkyrie Empire exists because everyone believes they're invincible. Commander Harper shattered that belief when he punched through the Eternal Judgment's shields. Kira pointed to the tactical display. This fleet isn't coming to fight. It's coming to exterminate every human who witnessed what happened. Every record, every sensor log, everything. The implications hung in the air like poison. How many ships does Earth have in this sector? Jake asked. Lang's expression darkened. 42 combat-capable vessels. Most are corvettes like yours. We have 3 destroyers and 1 heavy cruiser. She paused. They outgun us 4-1, outmass us 20-1. Then we don't fight them head-on. Kira moved to the display and began highlighting points in the Valkyrie formation. Their fleet doctrine is 3,000 years old, built on overwhelming force and direct engagement. They'll expect you to either run or form a defensive line. What do you suggest? Lang asked. Kira's violet eyes gleamed. I suggest we show them what happens when an empire fights a species that evolved on a death world. She looked at Jake. You asked me to show you Valkyrie tactics. Let me show you how to destroy them instead. Jake grinned. Now we're talking. Lang looked between them. You're both insane. which is exactly what this situation needs. You've got 72 hours to plan something impossible, Harper. Make it count. The briefing room held 20 ship captains, every available commander in the sector. They sat around a holographic display showing the approaching Velkari armada, their faces grim as Kira outlined the enemy formation. The Velkari fight like they build, she said, manipulating the display. Layers. Shields upon shields, ships upon ships. Their dreadnoughts anchor the center, cruisers form wings, support vessels create a rear screen. It's designed to be unbreakable. Captain Derek Stone of the destroyer Relentless leaned forward. So how do we break it? You don't. Kira zoomed in on the fleet's structure. You make them break themselves. The Velkari have one critical weakness. They've never fought an enemy that didn't care about casualties. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. Jake stood. She's not suggesting suicide runs. She's saying we use their assumptions against them. They think we'll preserve our forces. They think we'll retreat when damaged. They're wrong. Explain. Commander Lang stood at the back, arms crossed. Kira highlighted 3 points in the enemy formation. Here, here, and here. Supply tenders carrying antimatter fuel for the dreadnoughts. Velkari doctrine keeps them in the rear, protected by overlapping shields. Destroying them would cripple the fleet's endurance. Those tenders are 200 kilometers behind the front line, Stone said. We'd have to punch through their entire formation to reach them. Exactly what they expect you to think is impossible. Kira's fingers danced across the controls, but human ships are smaller, faster, and more maneuverable. Your armor is primitive but dense. Your shields regenerate faster than ours, and your crews react in milliseconds instead of calculated seconds. Jake pulled up ship specifications. We sent 3 strike groups, 6 ships each, corvettes and frigates only. Fast, expendable if necessary. Each group targets 1 tender. While they're focused on the strike groups, the destroyers and heavy cruiser hit them from a different angle, Grant added, catching on. Split their attention. They'll adapt, another captain warned. Velkari battle computers will compensate within minutes, which is why we keep changing tactics every 90 seconds. Kira brought up combat simulations. Velkari excel at execution of predetermined strategies. Force them to improvise and they slow down. Slow them down and they die. Lang studied the plan. This requires perfect timing and coordination. One mistake and we lose 1/3 of our fleet in the opening minutes. We'll lose everything if we don't try, Jake said. The Velkari are bringing extinction. We're bringing chaos. Ha! I'll take chaos over certainty any day. The captains began arguing, voices rising as they debated approaches and alternatives. Kira watched them with fascination. They question you, she said quietly to Jake. In Velkari command, such dissent would mean execution. In human command, it means we get better plans. Jake smiled. 500,000 years of evolution taught us that the best idea doesn't always come from the highest rank. 2 hours later, they had a strategy. Insane, desperate, and built on humans doing what they did best, refusing to accept inevitable defeat. The fleet dispersed to prepare. Jake returned to the Defiant to find his crew already running combat drills. Kira followed him to his quarters, her expression troubled. I need to tell you something, she said once the door sealed, about the Velkari and why they truly want me back. Jake poured himself coffee, the real stuff from Earth. I'm listening. I'm not just any commander. I'm the daughter of High Chancellor Velketh, 3rd in line for Imperial succession. She met his eyes. When I retreated from your colonies, I didn't just defy orders. I defied my father directly. He commanded me to exterminate every human settlement in that sector. I refused. Jake set down his cup. You didn't think that was worth mentioning earlier? Would it have changed your decision to save me? No. But it explains why they sent half their fleet. He ran a hand through his hair. Your father is willing to start a war to execute his own daughter? My father is willing to start a war to prove that compassion is weakness, that mercy is failure. Kira's voice hardened. He built his power on absolute ruthlessness. I became evidence that his bloodline could produce weakness. He can't allow that evidence to survive. Then we make sure you do survive. Jake stood, and we make sure he learns that underestimating humans was his biggest mistake. The next 3 days blurred together. Drills, simulations, weapons checks, shield calibrations. Jake barely slept, and when he did, he dreamed of fire and vacuum. Kira proved invaluable, walking crews through Valkyrie's shield frequencies, power distribution patterns, and communication protocols. She knew where every weakness lived in ships she'd once commanded. On the final night before the fleet arrived, Jake found her in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "Second thoughts?" he asked. "Certainly." She didn't look away from the viewport. "Tomorrow, I betray everything I was raised to believe, everything I was taught to value. My people, my empire, my blood. You already betrayed it when you chose mercy over murder. No." She turned to face him. "Then I simply refuse to participate in evil. Tomorrow I actively fight to destroy my own people. That's different." Jake moved to stand beside her. "You're not destroying your people. You're fighting the ones who would rather commit genocide than admit they might be wrong. There's a difference." "Is there?" Her voice carried pain. "Or am I just telling myself that to sleep at night?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "But I do know that if we don't stop that fleet, billions of humans die. Men, women, children. People who never fired a shot at the Valkyrie Empire. So yeah, maybe we're the bad guys in your Empire's story, but we're the only thing standing between them and mass murder." Kira nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow, I stand with the bad guys. Welcome to humanity." Jake offered his hand. "We specialize in being everyone else's villain." She gripped it. "Teach me to be a proper villain then, Commander. Show me how Deathworlders wage war." The alarm klaxons began wailing. Grant's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations. Valkyrie fleet just dropped out of FTL. Time to contact. 30 minutes. Jake and Kira ran for the bridge. The impossible battle was about to begin. The Valkyrie fleet materialized like a metal storm, 80 cruisers gleaming in the starlight. The dreadnoughts emerged last, each one the size of a city, bristling with enough firepower to scorch planets. Jake stood on the Defiance Bridge, watching the display with cold focus. "All ships report ready status." "Strike Group Alpha ready," came Stone's voice from the Relentless. "Strike Group Beta ready," reported Captain Nina Frost from the Corvette Havoc. "Strike Group Gamma ready," confirmed Captain Luis Rodriguez from the frigate Wildfire. The Valkyrie fleet began its approach, massive and methodical. Textbook perfect. Exactly as Kira had predicted. No wasted movement, no uncertainty, just overwhelming force rolling forward like an avalanche. "They're hailing us," Grant said. "Put it through." The viewscreen flickered. High Chancellor Velkith appeared, his features sharp and cruel, his 6 arms spread in a gesture of absolute authority. He looked like an older, harder version of Kira. "Humans." His voice dripped contempt. "You harbor a traitor and a coward. Return my daughter, and we will grant you swift deaths. Refuse, and watch your stations burn, your ships shatter, your worlds turn to ash." Jake stepped forward. "Chancellor, I've got a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around and we'll forget you threatened us. Stay on this course and you'll learn why Earth is classified as a death world." Velkith's laugh was like breaking glass. "Death world. You use that word as if it means power. It means you crawled from savage mud while we built empires among the stars. Means you are primitives playing with weapons you barely understand." His eyes found something off-screen. "Bring her forward." 2 guards dragged Kira into view of their transmission. She stood straight despite their grip, her face expressionless. "Daughter." Velkith's voice went cold. "You have one chance to redeem our bloodline. Denounce these animals. Return to face judgment with dignity. Die as Valkyrie, not as human pet." Kira met her father's gaze without flinching. "I am no longer your daughter. I am First Officer Kira Valseth of the Earth vessel Defiant, and I will watch your empire burn for what you've become." Velkith's expression twisted into rage. "Then you will die with them. Weapons free. Exterminate them all." The transmission cut. "All ships execute Plan Chaos," Jake commanded. Strike groups, punch through and reach those tenders. Everyone else, make 'em think we're insane. The human fleet scattered in 12 different directions simultaneously. No formation, no obvious pattern. The Valkyrie fleet hesitated for precisely 3 seconds as their battle computers tried to analyze the chaos. 3 seconds was enough. Strike Group Alpha dove under the Valkyrie formation, engines screaming at maximum burn. Energy beams chased them, carving through space, but the small human ships jinked and weaved with reflexes no alien crew could match. "Incoming fire," Porter called out as plasma bolts converged on the Defiant, shields holding at 80%. Jake threw the ship into a barrel roll that would have killed unprotected crew. The inertial dampeners screamed in protest but held. Plasma sailed past, missing by meters. "Return fire, all batteries." The Defiant's railguns opened up, hurling tungsten slugs at relativistic speeds. 3 Valkyrie cruisers took hits, their shields flaring and collapsing under the kinetic impacts. "They're adapting," Kira warned, watching her station. "Redirecting shield power to forward arcs, tightening formation to cover the tenders." "Good." Jake grinned savagely. "That's exactly what we want. All ships, execute maneuver Delta 7. The human fleet suddenly reversed course, burning hard toward the enemy instead of away. The Valkyrie computers needed 4 seconds to recalculate. 4 seconds of confusion while human ships closed the distance. The Relentless led the charge, her heavy guns blazing. She slammed into the Valkyrie left flank like a meteor, shields glowing white-hot, armor ablating under sustained fire. But she didn't slow. Destroyer-class engines pushed her through the enemy formation, her weapons savaging everything in range. "Relentless reporting 60% damage," Grant said. "They're still in the fight." Strike Group Beta reached the first tender. 6 corvettes swarmed it, pouring fire into its lightly shielded hull. The tender tried to flee, but human missiles tracked it, slamming home one after another. The antimatter fuel ignited. The explosion vaporized the tender and took 3 nearby cruisers with it. The shockwave rippled through the Valkyrie formation, disrupting shields and sensors. "First tender down," Frost reported, her voice breathless. "We lost the Corvette Archer, everyone else limping but mobile." "Strike Group Gamma engaging second tender," Rodriguez called. "Heavy resistance. We're taking casualties." Jake watched his tactical display. The Valkyrie fleet was reacting now, pulling ships back to protect the remaining tenders, their perfect formation crumbling as they tried to defend multiple attack vectors simultaneously. "They're bunching up around the tenders," Kira observed, overlapping their shields. "Perfect." Jake opened fleet-wide comms. "All ships, new priority targets. Forget the tenders. Hit the dreadnoughts. Maximum aggression. Ramming speed if necessary." "Sir?" Grant's eyes went wide. "You heard me. We're gonna do what no sane species would do." Jake pointed at the nearest dreadnought. "We're going to charge ships 100 times our size and make them blink first." The human fleet turned as one and accelerated toward the dreadnoughts. 42 ships against 12 massive warships that could obliterate them with single volleys. The Valkyrie opened fire with everything. Space became a storm of energy and metal. The Corvette Valiant exploded, taking her entire crew with her. The frigate Mongoose lost her engines and went tumbling into the void. But the humans didn't slow. The Defiant shook as a plasma beam scored their port side. Panels exploded on the bridge. Porter screamed as sparks erupted from his console and Grant dragged him clear. "Forward shields failing," Cross shouted. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. Maintain course," Jake commanded. "Fire everything." They closed a point-blank range, with the dreadnought Eternal Glory. The massive warship's weapons tracked them, so many guns that dodging was impossible. So Jake didn't dodge. He triggered every thruster simultaneously, spinning the Defiant in a corkscrew pattern while maintaining forward velocity. The ship became a tumbling projectile impossible to target precisely. At 200 meters, he fired every weapon they had left. Railguns, missiles, plasma cannons, even the emergency escape pod launchers loaded with improvised explosives. Everything hit the same point on the dreadnought's shields. The shields held for exactly 1.3 seconds. Then the Defiant's armored nose. moving at combat speed, punched through and buried itself 15 meters into the dreadnought's hull. Metal screamed. Alarms wailed. The ship shuddered to a halt, wedged into a warship's armor like a splinter. "Set demolition charges," Jake ordered, tasting blood from where he'd bitten his tongue. "We're leaving a present." Kira stared at him. "You intentionally rammed a dreadnought? Welcome to human tactics." Jake hit the intercom. "All hands abandon ship. 60 seconds. Move." The crew ran. The Defiant's crew sprinted through tilted corridors as emergency lights strobed red. Jake and Kira reached the escape pods just as the demolition charges began their countdown. 30 seconds, Grant yelled, shoving crew members into pods. "Move, move, move." Jake made sure every pod was full before climbing into the last one with Kira and Grant. The hatch sealed and the pod blasted free just as the charges detonated. The explosion tore through the Defiant and into the Eternal Glory's reactor core. The dreadnought died in a blast of white fire that consumed 2 nearby cruisers. Through the pod's tiny viewport, Jake watched his ship disappear. 3 years he'd commanded the Defiant. Now she was debris and memory. "Picking up multiple transponders," Grant said, checking the pod's sensors. "Most of the crew made it out." "Good." Jake activated the emergency beacon. "Now we just need someone to pick us up before we freeze or the Velkhari finish us." The battle raged around them. Human ships continued their suicidal charges, trading themselves for pieces of the Velkhari fleet. Another dreadnought fell to concentrated fire from Strike Group Alpha. A third lost power when the destroyer Relentless, her hull shattered and burning, crashed into its bridge at full speed. But the humans were dying too. The frigate Wildfire, the corvette Thunder, the destroyer Guardian. Each one taking crews, taking lives, taking pieces of humanity's desperate defense. "We're losing," Kira whispered, watching the tactical readout. "Too many ships, too much firepower." Then the stars changed. Jump signatures, massive ones, tore open behind the Velkhari fleet. 50 human warships emerged from FTL, fresh from Earth itself. Carriers, battleships, heavy cruisers, the reinforcements Lang had called for 3 days ago. And leading them, a ship twice the size of any Velkhari dreadnought. The UES Humanity's Wrath, Earth's first and only super dreadnought, built in secret over 15 years. Admiral Chen's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Velkhari fleet, you have 10 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why threatening Earth was your species' final mistake." High Chancellor Velkith's response was immediate. "One ship does not change your fate, human. You are still outnumbered and—" The Humanity's Wrath fired. Her main cannon, a railgun the size of a city block, launched a projectile at .08 light speed. The tungsten round hit the dreadnought Crimson Throne dead center and punched completely through, exiting the other side before the ship even registered the impact. Then, the Crimson Throne split in half and exploded. 9 seconds, Admiral Chen said calmly. The Velkhari fleet broke. Ships scattered in every direction, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos as survival instinct overrode 3,000 years of doctrine. Some tried to jump to FTL, others attempted to fight, most simply ran. The human fleet pursued without mercy, fresh ships against damaged ones. Earth's fury unleashed after decades of being dismissed as primitives. A rescue shuttle from the Humanity's Wrath scooped up Jake's escape pod along with dozens of others. The hangar was organized chaos, medics rushing to treat wounded, engineers cataloging survivors. Jake stumbled out, Kira supporting him. His ribs were broken, his uniform was scorched, and he was pretty sure his left arm was fractured. He'd never felt better. Admiral Chen met them on the hangar deck. She was tall, silver-haired, with eyes that had seen every kind of war. "Commander Harper," she looked him up and down. "You started this mess with one ship in pure insanity. I had to bring 50 to finish it." "Sorry about that, Admiral. Don't be." Chen smiled coldly. "The Velkhari needed to learn what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness." She turned to Kira. "And you must be the defector who made this possible." Kira straightened despite her injuries. "First Officer Kira Valsith, Admiral, formerly of the Velkhari 3rd Fleet." "Not anymore." Chen handed her a datapad. As of 20 minutes ago, the Velkari High Council issued a statement. They've declared your father a rogue element, stripped him of rank, and are suing for immediate peace negotiations. You're no longer exiled or disgraced. You're a political refugee who exposed warmongering. The council wants you to testify against him. Kira stared at the pad, her hands shaking. They're sacrificing him to save themselves. Politics. Chen shrugged. Your people get to claim they never wanted this war, blame it all on one zealot and save face. We get peace and reparations. Everyone wins, except the warmongers. And my father fled toward the Outer Rim with 12 loyal ships. We'll hunt him eventually, but right now we have bigger problems. Chen looked out at the debris field where hundreds had died. We won this battle, but it cost us 23 ships destroyed. 4,000 casualties. Earth needs to rebuild. Jake watched the rescue operations continue. So many pods still out there. So many people waiting to be saved. What about the Defiance crew, he asked. 78% survival rate. Your people got out fast. Chen paused. I'm giving you the Redeemer, a new destroyer fresh from the yards. You'll need a first officer. She met his eyes and nodded. I have one, Admiral. Chen smiled. Good, because the galaxy just learned that humans don't back down, and every other species is going to want to test that. We need ships and crews ready to prove the lesson again, if necessary. 3 months later, the destroyer Redeemer patrolled the frontier. Jake sat in the captain's chair while Kira worked at the first officer's station, her movements confident and sure. Incoming message, Grant called from communications. It's from the Velkari Council. They're asking if Commander Valzeth would be willing to participate in their war crimes tribunal against her father. Kira looked at Jake. He nodded. Tell them yes, she said. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything he did, everything he ordered, every life he was willing to sacrifice for pride. The message was sent. Kira returned to her work, but Jake saw the tension in her shoulders. Regrets? He asked quietly. Every day. She didn't look up. But I'd make the same choices again. My people needed to learn that power without honor is just tyranny. If my father's trial teaches them that, then perhaps some good comes from all this death. And after the trial? Now she looked at him, violet eyes clear. After the trial, I returned to my post, to my ship, to my crew. A slight smile crossed her face. To my people, because somewhere between running from a tribunal and ramming a dreadnought, I stopped being Velkari and became something else. Human? Jake asked. Human enough. She turned back to her console. Besides, someone needs to teach you proper fleet tactics instead of this beautiful chaos you call strategy. Grant laughed from her station. Porter and Cross joined in. The bridge filled with the sound of a crew that had survived the impossible and knew they'd do it again if necessary, because that's what humans did. They took the outcasts, the refugees, the disgraced and dishonored. They gave them purpose and family and a reason to fight. And when the galaxy pushed back, humanity pushed harder. Jake leaned back in his chair and smiled. The frontier was vast, the dangers endless, and the future uncertain. Perfect conditions for a species from a death world. The Redeemer's engines hummed as they jumped to their next assignment, carrying with them the legend that would echo across the stars. Never threaten Earth. Never underestimate humanity. And never ever make them choose between surrender and chaos. They'll choose chaos every